Some of the things that I disagree with that people are doing is still expecting results by getting in the face of politicians or expecting politicians to do things for them. I wouldn't discourage anybody from supporting a political party that aligns with with what we need. Politics, it's not the solution to our problem. Our existing political system needs to be collectively abandoned by those of us who are sovereign and can establish independence from the state, and our approach to politics needs to return back in the direction of how it was originally defined by Aristotle, deciding the rules to live by and the goals to collectively pursue. We can do this much easier as smaller communities because realistically we don't all pursue the same things. So we need to fragment. Being divided isn't a bad thing when you're more collectively within your own pursuit. This is a key factor of the solution I'm going to be proposing, yet it's only a minor part since this solution would make government unnecessary. They're not going to like that, therefore it will never pass through government and will need to be implemented independently. There is a process for doing that. I'm going to get to that at the end of this video. One thing I want to talk about that I haven't talked much about in this blog is a recent split that we had in the community from our last protest. So I understand that people are really frustrated with how the protests have been going, and I agree that the people taking the lead, they're not elected. I don't believe we should be represented under anybody's banners, under a group or organization. I believe we can do this independently as Irish people. We don't need to go under any banners. But I also believe that those people that were doing that had very, very good intentions, and they are good people that we need on our side. Now what's happened with the split is the people who are most frustrated with that, because they were of the opposite mindset. Yellow vest mindset being to play it safe, do what the Gardaí are satisfied with us doing, that they won't cause us too much trouble, and to not do anything, cause any violence or not cause too much trouble. And so we have the opposite extreme rising up, and having to choose between those two things is really, really not a good thing. Causing chaos in the streets of Dublin is not going to make anybody reverse any legislation. It's really not going to change anything. Oh, it's going to raise awareness. Yeah, but what type of awareness do you want to raise? Do you want to piss off more people? Because they're not going to blame the government for what you're doing. They're going to see that it's what you're doing that's causing that. So if you want to shut down the ports, I mean, that's as good as a lockdown. You want to take the power and use it to do exactly what they would do to us? You go ahead. Make an enemy of the people. These are not really solutions. These are just people who feel like we need to do something and they can't figure out what, so that's what they resort to. But it doesn't actually solve anything. And now that we are stuck with, what we always end up stuck with, two extremes, and all our other leaders basically burned at the stake, I think everybody's extremely lost right now, especially as we're coming up to the 22nd of October. Things are headed in the right direction, or so it seems. But what difference does it make? If everything went back to normal on the 22nd, what difference would it really make after everything? Are you gonna feel secure? You're gonna feel like they can't do this again? What happens when, the global warming lockdowns begin? Does it even matter if they don't? Does it even matter if things really go back to normal? How are you going to live knowing that at any stage these people can do this to us? So we all know it's not over. We all know that we have to keep going until we free ourselves. But it's not freedom. It's not freedom that needs to be our goal. Freedom is just a word. It's a sense of being. And we all are free. The people who are not free are the ones that are living in fear. But what we need is independence. We need to be so independent that we don't need them for anything. So, we're feeling lost. We have a lack of leadership. At the end of this video, I'm going to describe a process for electing leaders. It is very unconventional. It is not the system that we've been using, because that is broken. And it is designed to prevent the types of things that our current election process allows. We can't make our government implement this system. That's not the point. We're not going to try and get them to do this. Okay, we don't give a shit what they do anymore. Okay, or you shouldn't. I don't. What we need to care about is how we do things, because we're going to empower ourselves to the point that they're going to be dependent on us. We're going to empower ourselves that we're so independent that we need nothing from them and they need us. And this election process is going to set us up with that power. There are a few things about it that might seem confusing. It might seem a little overcomplicated. There is a book you can read, More Equal Animals, that explains everything behind it. And I'm going to be putting this into practice very soon so we can see just how complicated it is. I believe in practice it's not that difficult. The system that we have actually is quite complicated when you think about it. It's just that we've been doing it for so long that it doesn't seem very difficult. This would essentially be, it would probably feel very similar, except you will feel much more involved in this process, because you're not just going to go down and pick a name out of so many people that you really didn't have time to get to know. In fact, you're going to go down and you're going to get to know some people. And you're going to vote out of those people. But yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that at the end of this. So this is the second step, which is to choose your leaders wisely. And I'm going to teach you about that process, to do that in a way that is much more bottom-up structured rather than top-down. In other words, the people who are elected are dependent on us. They answer to us and not the other way around. One thing I want to talk about as well, very, very briefly, is about our use of music. People are frustrated at some of the protests that, you know, it's treated as just fun for most people. And I think that's a bad thing. This is one of the things that brings people in, and it shouldn't be underestimated, the power of that. The Irish Republican Brotherhood, which is the organisation that freed Ireland from the British, they started out recruiting people by disguising themselves as a cultural revival. So they used music and dance, Irish music and dance. They wanted to revive the Irish culture. And they used that because they knew that that's where they were going to find the people they needed to recruit into the Irish Republican Brotherhood. So nobody knew when they were going to this that they could be putting themselves out there in a position that, you know, if the British knew what they were doing, they would be, you know, they would have their eyes up and watching like, whoa. And there was other advantages to this as well. Just keeping people's spirits up. My own family, my own great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents were involved in the Irish Rising. And my granny told me stories. They had weekly parties that brought in everybody. And there would be meetings happening in one room and music happening in another room and dancing, games and drinking in another room. And the women would feed everyone. And you might foo-foo it sometimes, but these are the things that bring people in. It might look to you like nothing's happening, but maybe that's just because you are not involved in the meeting that's happening. And if you want to get involved, you have to network and find the right people. So then there's the third step. The first step was know your comrades. Second step, which we're going to come back to, is choose your leaders wisely. And the third step is establish your goals. If we don't know our goals, we are fucked. Okay? And this is the problem with a lot of the things that we're doing and why people are getting discouraged. It's like, why didn't we get a result from that? Well, because you don't really know what it is you're trying to achieve. You're not really thinking about it before you're trying to do something about it. You're just doing something and then realizing that there really was no way that this could actually achieve what you wanted. So this is one of our problems. We have no strategy, and it's because we're such a large community. We need leaders who are connecting to each other. Okay, this process is going to do that. We need leaders who are connecting to each other and keeping everyone informed on their roles, depending on what level they are at. Right? Not everybody needs to know. If everyone were to know, then the Gardaí had to know as well. Right? Keep that in mind. So there may be things that you don't know, and you might be grateful that you don't. So we need to establish our goals. We can argue everybody has the same goal. We're looking for freedom. But freedom is too vague. It's a state of mind. Freedom is about choices. For over a year now, people have been insisting, like, you won't have, we don't have, I didn't have a choice. The reality is there's always, and there always has been, a choice. People tend to say that there isn't a choice when they wanted to, the choice that they wanted to make was made too difficult. So they may have made the wrong choice out of fear. And if making the wrong one riddles their subconscious with guilt and shame, that can make the next choice even harder. Whether you're in government or just a nosy neighbour with the petty power to shun and shame people, the scale of panic choices goes from pretending to be heroes by wearing a petri cloth that soaks up bacteria in a warm, moist environment, giving it better opportunity to grow, to choosing to transfer sick, infected patients from a hospital into care homes to induce a surge in elderly deaths. These are examples of choices that can be so tormenting that the person cannot bear to see others get any benefit from making a different one. So there are people who choose to make other choices more difficult, both for themselves and for others. They don't want to seem like they're the only fucking idiots in the world. For their choices to torment them less, they have to make choosing to do the right thing harder. What we've learned is that people who panic and live in fear repeatedly make bad choices. And what I've been observing in our community is that, especially with the vaccination of children, people in our community have been acting out in fear and acting irrationally and lashing out at people and making witches of our leaders, burning them at the stake. When emotions run high, logic runs low. Fear does this to us. And there's no shame in having fears. There's only shame in refusing to face and overcome them. In our moments of hopelessness, we're letting our fears and frustrations divide us. There's no consensus on the right way to get what we all want, and most people haven't even established their own idea of what that is. This is because we have no clearly defined goals. When you don't have goals, you don't have focus. You're easily distracted. The moment we become frustrated, we lash out at one another, looking for somebody to blame. Okay, who are you going to blame? You're going to blame the leaders. We need to forget about shills. Okay, all of this talk of shills is doing the work of the shills. Right? You're doing their job for them if you are talking about who is or could be a shill. We need to forget that they even exist. If you keep suspecting or accusing people of being shill or controlled opposition, the shill has already won. They've successfully distracted you and influenced you into creating division of the people. We need to behave as if there's no shills among us, that they have no power over us. We don't have to fear them. The only thing to fear is fear itself. Don't do the job for them. And I'm not denying their existence. They may exist, but the vast majority of people who have been accused of being shills weren't. They were good people who didn't do things the way everybody wanted them to. If you do suspect somebody, my suggestion is you attack the idea or the action that it is they're doing, not the person, right? So you bring that down. If there's something somebody's doing that's not right, say it loudly that this is not right. What they're doing is not right. If you're going to call them a shill, you're creating another distraction. Because people don't fully understand why it is you're calling them that. Especially when they've done so much good. And it just spreads. It's a virus. The suspicion. If that person could be a shill, who else could be a shill? And the thing about a shill is they only have power if you don't know your goals and you're not focused on your goals. So that's what we need to establish.